Design fiction and tools. The group discusses design fiction and ways to create tools and products related to it, like AI prompts and mockups. There is potential to turn design fiction into a series of tools. Funding models. The group considers different funding models for their work, like sponsored content, where investors support a project without creative input. They discuss the challenges of VC funding and how it could impact their goals. Funding could help accelerate useful projects if used properly. Group dynamics. The group talks about why people come to them and their value proposition. They get creativity and inspiration from each other and want to imagine better futures. They discuss overcoming blockages to push projects forward. Two members discuss finalizing a book for publication. Speculative futures project. One member is going to Berlin to meet with design studios doing speculative futures work. Another has an idea to visualize an alternative future for Haiti using AI tools. They discuss using the tools as a collaborator and mixing in other mediums. They agree to continue the discussion. Re-engaging. Coming to the discussion group was a good way for one member to re-engage with the others.
Question. Can you describe the discussion in a way that would get the attention of someone who is curious to learn about how they can find more creative ways to work and collaborate?
Answer. Are you hungry for inspiration and new ways of thinking about the future? This group of creative visionaries is exploring radical new forms of workplay and collaboration aimed at building a more just and sustainable world. Through imaginative experiments in design fiction, they are prototyping alternative ways of organizing human creativity that prioritize meaningful impact over corporate profits. Their weekly discussions are a shot of creative rocket fuel, filled with ideas for decentralized networks, platforms to share speculative work, and new funding models that don't crush your autonomy. If you're curious to learn how to break free of traditional institutions and find your tribe of fellow world builders, this is a conversation you need to be part of.
Person I've met in person.
Yeah, David and I had a tea the other day. We met for tea at the Only Cafe.
Awesome.
We live in the same general vicinity, which is pretty random and cool.
That's great.
Are you jealous?
I am.
Good.
That's okay. We'll be in the same general vicinity next weekend, Julian.
Yeah, that's right. It's gonna be fun.
Are you going to Los Angeles, Dre, or is Julian coming to Toronto?
No, we're meeting in Detroit.
Okay, neither.
Yeah.
Nice.
Neither. We're just racing to Detroit. The plan is to do like a quick high five and that's it. Just
Stay in the car, just drive by each other.
yeah.
High five.
Well, yeah, exactly. Just quick high five.
Like a joust. Like a
Actually, that's
truck
kind of
stop.
funny. A high five joust. That's a good competition.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Nice. I didn't get mine, but I must have got lost in the mail, but that's fine.
Yeah, snail mail.
I put together a little I'm calling it the Imagine Harder Summit, and it's a bit of an experiment. So it's the first one, which makes it sound like there'll be more. Maybe there will, maybe there won't. But I just wanted to get a bunch of people who are kind of that
Imagining
I like.
hard.
If I got them in a room, we could start a global renaissance. No, I'm not being hyperbolic. I'm being literal.
I like when you use the word vanguard. I'm like, every time you say the word vanguard, I'm like, yeah, I need to use that word more often.
Yeah, the edge of something. Some people are at the edge of things, and some people are kind of like waiting for that edge. They're the people who showed up, and then the people who are like waiting for other people to show up, or like then they'll be like, oh wow, something's going on, cool. But you need that vanguard.
Yeah,
People who are
edge
just,
lords.
yeah, just right at the edge of things. Not necessarily bad or anything. Maybe they probably suffer for it because they're like, people are like, they're crazy. I don't know what they're talking about. It doesn't make any sense. How do you make any money doing that? Like, well, I don't know. It'll happen, but you got to be on the edge. and then people pile on. It's like human-centered design. Like now everyone's doing human-centered design, but it's old. It's like, talking to people would be like, no, 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 we need to move on to
Yeah.
human-centered design. And you're like, okay, so the people who did human-centered, once it shows up as a Harvard executive program, as a
And it's so
free
boring
online
by that
Harvard
point.
executive program, then it's
Yeah.
cooked.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the term is jump the shark, right? Isn't that the
Yeah,
term
jump the
they
shark.
use?
Yeah, but it might not have totally jumped the shark. It might be like thinking, wow, I think we could clear that. And then once it's jumped the hard shark, then everyone, the whole world's kind of like, I don't know.
You know,
So
me
I'm
and Dre were
curious.
talking about that. Like
Getting your
leaving
electric bikes
leaving it.
and a ramp and finding a shark someplace.
Yeah.
Exactly. But also the concept of leaving a trend or what have you concept just in time for everyone else to make a bunch of money off of it, but you kind of leave it because you're bored of it. So I think that's an interesting thing. How does the vanguard stay long enough so that they realize the fruits of the labor of pioneering?
Okay, so I got a bunch to say on that. One thing is that if you're at the vanguard, you generally speaking, because I've experienced this for sure. It's like when something the idea of extracting financial value out of it runs against your sensibilities.
Yeah.
So you're kind of like, no, but so you don't become bored of it. It interferes with your the value system you have in
Values.
place. And so it's not bored. It's kind of like eyeball rolly. Like here comes the unwashed mob. The Philistines come to extract value from this thing that I always knew was one beautiful.
How do you get
And
around that? What's the pathway to
how do you
avoid that?
what?
How do you get around that? Like, is there the non-eye roll pathway to sticking around?
Yeah, totally. It's $500 of professional coaching to get your consciousness to wrap around that.
Mhm.
So if you want to talk about that, and you got $500 an hour. I'm happy to do work with you. See,
How
that's
about you take on a
that's the other
crippling
thing.
amount of debt?
That's the other thing that I learned. It's like, is I'm not saying that I probably I almost certainly could do that with you. I'm not saying you literally, Aaron. You and I we just talk, and you come to office hours, so some of this stuff comes out in that. But it's like, um, the other so that's me saying, hey, I have what you need, and for some reason my value system used to want to say, and you should have it too, so I'll give it to you. And that's that same thing, of not being able to say, hey, look, this is something that has value to your business, but I would rather just give it to you because that's an easier way for me to deal with this conflict in my head around this. I shouldn't be able to extract financial value from it. And I think once you realize that there's that kind of relationship between what you have that's of value, human-centered design before people were even saying it, or UX design before people were even saying it, or whatever, all the other things that I'm sure all of us have done, that then becomes kind of normalized and becomes like part of some, what we might say is like a bullshit curriculum or online certification, those things. You just have to, you find the way to confront it and to manage it in a way that where you recognize that someone's getting something out of this, and that's amazing, and I can offer it. But nothing comes for free. You have to give me something, even if that something isn't money, even if it's make them work for it. So Aaron, you wanted the answer to the question, like, how do you do it? It's like, you got to work for that. I can't just deliver it to you, even if I wanted to, because it's not going to mean anything to you unless you've expended or carried some kind of burden or load around it. And it's just like our universal form of load is like, give me some money. It could also be just like, you got to show up, like you do. So it's like, you got to show that you're putting in work for it. It's like, I guess the other analogy I was thinking this morning, because like I went for like it was better for me to do a quick hard ride. By quick I mean like 40 minutes than to not do one at all, because I knew like I wouldn't get to it later. And I was thinking as I was doing it, it's like I was kind of not, you know, just by coincidence of the route and all that kind of stuff. There was a guy on an e-bike, you know, like a trundler or whatever, with a kids thing in the back, and he was going like just a little bit faster than me, and he was also sort of like taking shortcuts. And I just, the thing is like, it wasn't anything against him, but about him, but I was like, I could take that shortcut and be done and get to where I'm going quicker. But then I was like, why would I do that? Like I would do that if I guy did or something, but he was doing shortcuts, and then I would inevitably catch up with him. And the thing that went through my head was like, there's no shortcut for the kind of ride that I'm doing. Matter of fact, you want to be out there for that full 40 minutes. I'm not, you know, not, and you need to carry that load. You need that burden. And the load for me was like, you know, it's harder, you know, just like by an increment. It's like I could be done with this quickly. And then I started thinking about all the get fit quick schemes, you know, like put this on your stomach and go to sleep and you'll have 6-pack abs in the morning. Like, why would you want to do that?
It's a great analogy. I mean, I think, you know, when you're trying to get something off the ground, often what it appears as though, and it definitely feels to me that way, is like what you need is $1 million. But if you had $1 million, you know, you wouldn't necessarily have the sense of how to spend it. But it seems like when people, you know, the joiners often come in with some sort of like existing business acumen, you know, and money and little else. But that, you know, that some can get them a certain distance, you know. So I don't know. Yeah, I think it is a trope for people to come in late and just kind of like walk away with the thing. So if it's just grit that's required, you know, for somebody to stick around, so be it. But
And
I
I think,
do think there could be a playbook in some way for like surviving the sort of like onslaught of money, which is often just like the only thing that's separating people from making it.
yeah, like developing a sense of comfort around it, and also just like a willingness to be like, to, you know, you do, if you do it enough, where the it being, no, I can't do that for you. You know, like not just, and not doing it because you feel that it would be like you're, you know, one particular mode would be like, this is the right thing. I remember, actually, it came up when I first started working with my coach like years ago. Um, like he had his price, and he was like, well, you know, well established, and everyone was like, if you can get him, this would be amazing. And he had his price, and I started horse trading with him, and I was like, you know, how about this? And he said very directly, he's like, well, if I do that, then you're not feeling the burden of maybe you're the edge of what it would take to do it. You're not going to bring as much to it. And at one point, he also told me, he's like, he uh he was working with someone who sounded like who sounded, you know, like they were fantastically wealthy, and they wouldn't you know, it was one example, is like they wouldn't show up, and one time was is like they wouldn't show up because they were going to be someplace else, but it sounded like they just didn't want to do the work. They didn't want because it was hard, you know, it's hard work, not physically hard, but it's like, you know, you got to deal with a lot of shit that maybe some, you know, some people might be like, I don't feel like dealing with that, whatever it is. And unless you got to feel a little bit of pain, you got to put something in for it to, I don't know, take hold or something like that. So, um, you know, even me doing like the 20-minute calls with people who join, which end up being like more than that. Um, yeah, sometimes I question that, like, not because of the use of time, but it's like, is it too easy for people? I don't know. Actually, maybe I don't think that.
I got another perspective or provocation here. Um, Borrowing from like platform thinking, right? Often with a platform strategy, there's the concept of seeding the market, and because there's some opportunity to like cause a tipping where you basically win the whole thing, but you have to kind of enter through like either a freemium model or something to get as broad as possible. I get as much adoption as possible, and then you later monetize through like data or through charging a subscription fee later on, or type of thing. So that's the whole idea of like cashing in later, is what I'm connecting to. Okay, so that leads to the question: what would a platform for design fiction look like? What would be parties to connect to? Like, who would you be delivering value to? Like creating, a medium through which who would connect? This is a probably tough question, but it felt like that's where my mind went as you were talking.
Hmm.
Julian, before we get too far, I'd like to interrogate what you said about human-centered design being passe. So I agree, but I wonder how you might characterize where we are or where we're going.
Well, I don't know. I'm not the expert really. It's been through a couple conversations, but one was with Johanna. It was a podcast a few or four episodes back, that came out of a conversation that we like, her kind of like whatever Discord onboarding conversation or whatever it was, where her thesis was on like more than human centered design, and I was like, "Ooh, what's that?" And so a lot of it's in that podcast episode. The main thing I got out of it is that it's very egocentric to imagine that we should design just for ourselves.
Yeah,
Especially when
okay.
people are kind of like, oh, planet, and what about other species and all that kind of stuff. So that to me was like the kind of like, whoa, yeah, you're right. That is, you could do a lot with that just in a, if you wanted to shame people, like, who do you think
Exactly. And so I
you are?
maybe the best we can do is that it's not tech-centered. What do you think?
I don't know. I'm not sure what that means. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what that means. I'm not sure why you said maybe it's not tech centered, but
Well,
I
like
think the
Kevin Kelly said years ago, he wrote that book of, what does tech want? As though, it actually has initiative, it has agency. And I think he got flack even for that. But of course, the people who jumped on that bandwagon were the people who are, heck yeah, they want to just design and create tech for tech's sake and fund it and forget about any implications for anything in the environment it lives in. Um, so that's why I mentioned non-tech forward futures.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think we're still interrogating all of that.
Yeah, for sure.
One thing I found that was really, this is completely like non sequitur, so forgive me, but maybe connecting back to the concept of a platform. One thing that I've been learning about this week is the extent to which speculative documentary creation, like spec docs, like how big that space is and how many people are doing it and examples of it. That's something that I find pretty interesting. And specifically, I guess maybe I'm like and me and Dre were talking about this when we met up, like I'm the ruthless capitalist maybe, but I'm like, what are some products? What are things that I could do? Or what are things that I can sell, I guess, that are design fiction oriented. And spec docs, I think are kind of cool. And yeah, if I'm picturing an amorphous sort of platform for design fiction, somehow generating that type of content, can you auto generate a speculative documentary about X subject, is something that's where my mind went just now. full of non sequiturs today, but that's kind of what I've been learning about that. I've got this. I'm going to Washington D.C. later this month, and I'm presenting on how design fiction can support advanced R&D, and so this notion of creating these futures that people can interact with that showcase, or extrapolations of engineering gaps that exist today and how they could potentially be filled with something, and what that would look like, maybe like the day in the life of like an engineer of X in the future. I just think that there's a lot you can do with that, and so yeah, it's something I'm unpacking. So yeah, that's what I'd offer to this part of the conversation.
Yeah. Well, so when you said platform, I was trying to think. I was like, how come David doesn't see Near Future Laboratories as a platform? Was one thing I was wondering.
It's not that I don't. I'm just like, what is the full? Like, is it? I guess I was thinking more of like a technology content platform.
So we create we make things, right?
It's true.
And we use AI. It's not. I mean, you're talking. If you're hoping for like the machine where you say uh Solarpunk Future, and out the other end comes the book that Dre and David are working on. Maybe, I mean, that's a little bit less interesting than for me. That's the why is that less interesting? It's not uninteresting, but I really enjoy the challenge of kind of getting people together around an idea and have them do it of their own
Yeah.
sense of enthusiasm, commitment, spirit. If it's just a machine, that's maybe the shark jump, which isn't not interesting. Again, isn't not interesting, right? So like, I think we're creating enough stuff here collaboratively that there's so much rich content that you can imagine that someone if at some point someone comes along and says like, man, you've got so much content, like, can I plug this into my large language my hyper large language model,
Yeah.
and you'll get a sense of how you do the things you do, and we can like ramp things up. That's sort of interesting. I'm not opposed to that, but right now at this mode, it's like I love when people. It doesn't happen often, right? Because you know how many projects are going on and what it takes to do it, independent of me doing something like saying like, okay, now we're a C corp, you're an employee, I expect this done by
Mhm.
the end of the month. Like that's less interesting to me. It's like, that sounds like its own version of hell. But if
Yeah.
people want to do it and they're excited to do it, then it's so much richer and engaging and beautiful, than if it's just the factory churning out the same F-150 pickup truck over and over and over again. I'm
I
not, I'm
think there's
not,
a lot
not
of
about
stuff.
like just the scale part, I guess, because that's also part of the values that I want to instill in the work. It's not about scale. It's about meaning.
Yeah,
Yeah. Fair enough.
I think there's some stuff that we're doing. Obviously, I see the Discord and Near Future Laboratory in general as a platform, and I also see it as a springboard for other platforms to emerge. Hang on a second, is this even work? I don't know if you can see my camera at all, but
Yeah, I can't see you myself, but I
is
can
it?
hear
No,
you.
that's all right. That's fine. I don't know how to turn the camera on. I'm on my phone now. Um, but yeah, I think that there's something with even the stuff that I'm experimenting with or contributing. Um, the I think there's an education platform to help people out understand what it is and what the benefits are. There's all the stuff that you're doing, Julian, with the books and the various seminars and workshops and so on. I I sell a design fiction prompt on prompt base for AI that you can buy and you can use, and it generates design fiction type of ideas based on what I prompted it to, and that one I'm going to create a version of it which is similar to what you're talking about, David, like inspiring people to like use it in advanced R&D. where I'm going to use more common words that people might not know, like inventors, invention. This is a great tool to inspire inventions of the future through artifacts. And then I'm selling mockups on Gumroad. So as I create design fiction visuals, I go through the process of creating the smart objects in Photoshop. And if you're somebody who uses Illustrator and Photoshop, you can purchase mockups and insert your own ideas into the artifact, or in this case, more like the archetype. So yeah, there's a lot of things that you can do. I think there's a big thing with AI. I actually noticed that somebody picked up designfiction.ai, so I'm curious to see where that goes. But yeah, I think that there's a lot of possibilities as to how this can be turned into a series of tools.
I can't tell who was just talking, but all that sounds really fascinating.
That was your
and
friend
if you could,
Dre.
oh, it's Dre.
It's
Oh,
your boy. It's your boy Dre.
it's your boy Dre.
Boy.
We forgot about Dre, but can you drop a link to some of the stuff you're talking about there, Dre? I'd love to follow up, or I can just follow up separately. But I'd love
Yeah.
to
No,
see
put
some
the
of that
links.
stuff.
The links.
Yeah. I'm
Put
not at my
the
computer
links.
right now.
Put
But
the
you know what?
links.
What you can just go back, just look at some design fictions over the past 2 weeks. I'll pop it in the chat when I get back to my tippy tappy keyboard.
Rock and roll. Very cool. Yeah. No, and I actually think Near Future Lab is totally a platform. Actually, it's not necessarily a traditional platform. It depends on how you want to look at it. But in the sense that there's enablement materials that you can take and then apply and then make some type of output yourself. I mean, that's what I'm doing. In my own little way. My outputs just happen to be exercises and keynote speeches for R&D people. But yeah, it is a platform. I was actually just kind of maybe offering the provocation of this notion of seeding a market, and what could that look like? I suppose, and maybe it's antithetical, Julian, to the values of anti-scale, or whatever you want to, however you want to frame it.
No, don't do that
Yeah.
yet. Don't do
Yeah,
that.
but like this notion of like far and broad as possible for the purposes of later monetizing across the broadened cohort. It's like, does that exist for this concept? Doesn't have to, but what
Yeah,
could it look like?
I don't see why. So a couple things. So I don't see why not, but you have to, and also maybe one comes at it not assuming that. So you're using like kind of the imagery that's coming to mind when you're saying that, and then immediately try to say like, almost like, but not bad, like, or not the stuff that we get we get such an allergic reaction. We even prevent ourselves from going there, even just in a conversation in a safe space like this, where we're just talking. So you're like, not like scale, and I'm thinking like, what is he talking about? Like, why would we not want it? When we know that the values that we're baking into this kind of work is, whatever I say, to make the world a more habitable place. Like that's my kind of, uh, very, very, hopefully very evocative and oversimplified idea of where the value is. And that does not mean that, oh, we must keep it in the art studio. We must keep it in the gallery. Not at all. Like I'm like actively engaging with uh with very large scale networks of like governments, which you might be like, oh, no. But it's like, well, how are we going to bring about material change? It's not going to happen if I do something, even if I got something at like, like a project, a beautiful little project, and I got it exhibited, like at the Guggenheim Museum. Like people are like, well, that's good. Yeah, it's kind of cool. There would be write-ups. But is it going to bring about material change in the world? I don't think so. Like I'm talking like Foxconn scale or whatever. You know, and I'm not afraid of capital. I'm not afraid of like big organizations. I understand how they work enough to know like where the challenges might be. But if we want to bring about the kind of material change that we're hoping for, you got to scale. But it's a particular it's scaling the values as well, not just the unit count or whatever, or not just the filthy lucre. And that's where it gets tricky. You know, you have to understand that that's what's going on. But you can't say I don't want to scale because that feels uh, you know, I'm uncomfortable with that because of my network of values. Like, I don't want to hang out with billionaires. It's like I do, and I feel like if I had a conversation with them and sort of reflected the values, I have a better chance of bringing about the kind of change that I hope to bring about than if I, yeah, forgive me, just have office hours and talk to ourselves. You feel me?
Scale it is then.
I mean, Julian brought up, there was a moment earlier, Julian, where you said like, we don't want to scale or something of that nature. And I think David caught that, but it wasn't, I think it was not, I don't think you weren't saying that literally. You're kind of using, I think, structures and frameworks that exist in the world that you don't necessarily want to follow into the future. And so, I mean, tell me if I'm wrong. This is just my interpretation.
I think you're right. So I probably did say it, and what goes
Yeah.
in my head is like, I think more of like the kind of structure. Yeah, I mean it's a conflict. Like you know, I deal with it. Um, I'm dealing with it now, like out loud. Is like a C corp. You know, the traditional scale and structure of a C corp, and I think you can. I guess so. My instinct is like there are other kinds of scaling. So distributed scaling. You know, like if we had the reach and influence of like Alcoholics Anonymous, like it's everywhere in the world, and so that's a you know possibly I don't know I'm not in AA, but someone brought it up in this paper that was really cool, which was like, wow, that's a really great model for a distributed autonomous organization. Like it's just a set of rules and procedures.
Help me. I can't stop being creative. Can't stop imagining harder.
Sorry to interrupt you, Jed. I didn't want to.
Oh, you know, that's fine. I think my point is that yeah, when I think when Julian speaks about an example of maybe not to follow into the future, or one that we're all familiar with, and maybe doing something different, that yeah, it's not literally like we don't want to do that thing. It's more that that's an example, um, that we don't see in this future, I suppose. So all those doors are open. And as he kind of corrected and said, no, I'm interested in scale, but I may have said no in that other context. So I would say like, generally the conversation's a lot like that, at least from my perspective here. So, there isn't necessarily one way of doing this, right? I don't know. They got a
Yeah.
little stuck there in the end, but I was just trying to fill in my perspective a bit.
Mm-hmm.
I think like when you get in bed with money, unless you're super careful, money wins and you end up doing things money's way. And that's the status quo. Like the people who are good at that game, they're the people that are they get the power and they make the game the one that they're good at. So like I think there's a sense that yeah, scale, billionaires, all the rest, but you sort of need to be so clear about what you want that you can subvert them or like make them only play by the rules that you're interested in and then like step out when it doesn't work for you anymore. And I think that's the fear. Like I think everybody's seen something they care about, especially like in the last 20 years, where it was like a new net thing, and it seemed like it was going to change how everything worked. And then eventually, like there's, to use language that the kids don't use anymore, like they sell out. and then it's
Yeah.
like it's different. And like even the idea of selling out is like not a thing anymore, which I think is like just indicative of how far along the line towards like, yeah, well, it's all just capitalism has kind of gone.
That's interesting, David. Because one of the things I've been mulling over is like this. It's like, how could this group benefit from like VC funds as a question, right? What would be like, could it be a venture-backed product studio, or does it make sense to have that part of it? You know what I mean? Because like I've got some VC buddies. I'm sure you folks know people in that space as well, and I love the solar punk book idea, for the record. The ABCs of solar punk. I love that idea, and I'm like, okay, so that's like a product, and how could that get as far as possible? Let's say you could bootstrap it, but is there a place for VC sort of injections or whatever outside investment injections? Question mark. Not like not at the price of our souls, to your point, David. And then I think about Vice Media. Of course, they went sort of whatever. They're, depending on how you look at it, they're toxic, right? Um, but for a little while they had something going where they were really, really successful with a sponsored content model, where it's just like, we're going to do this thing, right? And it's just like, we're producing a piece of content and you don't get to touch it, but you can pay us to stick your name at the end. And that was it. And that accounted for like a good chunk of the revenue. And so it's like, maybe that's kind of more in keeping with what you just said, David. There was just like, hey, you can hop on, right? And then there's like profit sharing at the back end type of thing, but you're not touching what gets made type of thing. Maybe it's more complicated than that, but I don't know. Some of the thoughts as I approach a group like this, I'm just like, you folks are so creative, and I like to think that I'm decently creative, but I'm like, I should have thought of solar punk ABCs. And then and then I'm just like, but wait, what can I add to the equation for that? It's like, I got a buddy with some cash. And like, but is that in keeping with the values of the group? Maybe I'll ask them. So anyways, that's where I'm at. Stuff that I think about.
Yeah, like
Good.
really happy to chat about like Solarpunk ABC separately, and like we need to finish that up. But yeah, like I think the
Yeah,
whole
you do.
we do. Yeah, I think the whole thing with that has been sort of like it is like supposed to be subversive. Like it's supposed to be that like tap your hands if you believe in fairies, and then there are fairies. Like show somebody the solar punk future, and then like maybe someone will build it. And like from that point, it's like if somebody was to inject money to like broaden the spread of that thing, like that's the goal. Like I don't even care if the thing makes any money, but it's just to spread the idea. That would be like awesome. And I think if you do it in such a way that you don't like dilute the idea in order to make it more palatable, uh, you have the opportunity to get into that vice position where like you get enough people that think what you're doing is like cool, that they're now paying attention to you. And like when you have your audience like that, I think like now you can you know work on the different like iterate on the ideas. So yeah, I think there's still plenty of work to do with ABC, so feel free to jump in.
There's also not exclusive of someone. I guess maybe a little bit. So to David's point earlier, it's like, well, why do you want to give us money? Let's say someone's like, I or why would I solicit someone for money? And it's a real question. Like, and not to say that we wouldn't, or given the opportunity to have that conversation, it wouldn't be an enlightening conversation and educational. You try to figure it out. Like I would, so there's that. I would not probably, almost certainly not, go in the situation, put myself in the situation or the state of mind that I had to be in with Amida, where I'm like pitching people for money, because I feel like that was an uncomfortable position for me to be in. It was fun, but it was uncomfortable because I was like, And I had amazing investors, so it was actually, I can't really complain. But you can imagine being in a position where they're like, "Here's what you're going to do for me," kind of thing, and it's like, no, 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 I'm telling you what I'm going to do, not for you, you know, kind of thing. I was never in that position with any of my investors. They're all just kind of like, "This is great, cool," and they were all, you know, they were all just like in that remarkable position of just being able to, like, not without even thinking about it, just be like, yeah, here's $500,000. Let me know how it goes, kind of thing. But the other side is like, if is to be able to tell the story about how we did this stuff, which is like we did it without venture capital, because we weren't operating in that mode. It was a different kind of way of being and operating and thinking and dreaming. And I think there's a really interesting story to tell about that I'm excited to tell with the projects. You know, like each had its own little path, um, that I think you can point to and say, like, here's a beautiful way of like translating ideas and imagination into something that is impactful. It's not necessarily unique, but you can tell that story. And yeah, it didn't have anything to do with typical that typical route, which I guess, you know, many of us are familiar with, which is like VC backed. You're not going to do it unless it's VC backed. It's not the only example. Like open source software, you know, still in the tech world does that. I don't know. You know, the zillions of things. People just bootstrap, start a cafe. Like you need VC funding for that. You know, I don't know. I guess restaurants people sometimes do. Um, but it is an interesting thing. Like if what would be the nature of it if someone said like, hey, um, I just love what you guys are doing. There's some value in it for me to give you $5 million, and you don't need to worry about that. But this is what the paper looks like, and basically like just have it, um, and uh, and let me know how it goes. Why would we want that? How would that change everything that's going on here? Because then, you know, um, then it was like, okay, what's the structure around this? Is it just $5 million in Julian's bank account? Or are people like, well, you know, hey, you know, I was kind of part of this for like the last few years, like break me off a piece, or I want to come, you know, give me a salary, and that now you're in a different kind of hell.
Yeah, that's when you're more beholden, I think, to VC input. Let's say if you're trying to, you know, if you have a burn rate type of thing, and you need to float the operation. I guess what I was picturing in my mind was like, and maybe this is not feasible, but I'm just kind of speaking to think here, but like a pool of funds that was available should a project perhaps meet a certain level of criteria, being a physical product that could sell through stores, let's say. Well, it doesn't really matter, or online, whatever. That's just to say that there's criteria, and the funds aren't necessarily just like available for like at a drip or anything like that. It's just like they're there if they're useful towards accelerating a product or project. I'm not even committing to saying that I can get that, right? But but maybe. But yeah, but it just, you know, that's kind of, but I agree that you wouldn't want it to pollute the value system, and also you wouldn't want to use it if you didn't need to. But yeah, but let's say for me, for example, I've got like a day job ish contract that floats, you know, it keeps the lights on, and then I got a burgeoning, growing design fiction practice that, you know, has cool projects and brings in a little bit of cash, right? Not necessarily enough to bootstrap a bunch of stuff myself, maybe a little bit here and there, but yeah, but I don't know. I feel like I'm still new to the group. Like, I feel like this group could produce some products that would be interesting and that maybe could be accelerated. Just some musings from this side, from the north.
It makes me think of the MIT Media Lab and sort of their mini ecosystem, and how when their product goes off into the world, the lab sort of retains sort of a percentage of the IP, for funding. But, that's obviously a vaster ecosystem there, covering a lot of different focuses, but it just reminds me of it.
Yeah, and they had
Great
a
analogy.
design fiction wing of that, and it didn't work out all that well.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was. I wouldn't associate it with the design fiction as we understand it. It was basically performance
Okay.
art.
Mm.
I called itself design fiction because there was some cachet associated with the term.
Oh, okay.
I'm curious in the VC realm, if you would think there would be pushback with the solar punk genre as it being inherently anti-capitalistic. Because as some of you know, I'm working with the ASU gentlemen at CSI directing a book trailer for their new anthology. And they're very hesitant about sort of punk because of the connotations of that a lot of their funders are very hesitant and resistant and push back against that term, even though so much of their literature that they publish, is inherently solar punk, but they're very careful not to say it.
That's that's the rub. You take the money,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden you have this
Mm.
relationship
Yep.
with it and what it represents that doesn't allow you to do the work that you think is important, which is like, hey, take it easy. What's wrong with punk? I mean, that that led to all kinds of beautiful new forms of expression and whatever. I don't know. But yeah, that's the price. And if you can't have that conversation with them in a frank way ahead of taking the Mazuma,
Yeah.
then that's when the real psychic trauma intercedes, where you're kind of like, what am I doing? This sucks. Now look at the situation. I can't get myself out of it, all because I thought I needed the money in order to do this thing. Which in many, I think in some circumstances, like you could argue that there's ways to do it that you don't, which I think is what's going on here. I'm not saying it's the best thing, and yeah, it'd be great if I had the money in order to get the F91W project done. I'd be interested in talking about that. That could be accelerated, and I know that would be an amazing little product. But otherwise, just sort of be patient, I guess.
I think that there has been sort of a bit of a war of attrition that's worked on them, because a couple of years ago they were very like, we cannot say solar punk, and now with what the approved proposal that we're going ahead to shoot, it definitely has artwork that is very solar punk-esque, and he's just like, let's just not push the punk. We're definitely in sort of these solar supported futures, but at least we're like we're showing, not telling, and maybe the showing is the most important thing at the end of the day too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe like the Giovanni ad. They didn't say solar punk, but people read it as
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I think it would have to be like sponsored content model, maintaining creative control. Just being like, no, like you can hop on and share in the profit by supporting the scale of this product, but this is not like an invitation for a contribution or feedback type of thing. But I mean, it would have to be that they're, down and interested and believe in like the group and the whole concept here, right? Where it's like you're bringing together these people that do this thing, and they come up with these ideas for these products, and have to trust them to do that. But yeah. Huh. I like the analogies used though. There's also the notion of like, if there's a VC, like let's say if it was a VC, if they have an established brand and like, they've got a stable of businesses that if they're like an extraction industry focused, you know what I mean? Like group, are they going to sponsor the solar punk thing? Well, I can actually argue both sides. Yes, as a mitigation, a halo effect. No, as in it's counter to their interests, let's say. I don't know. Yeah, it's just some thoughts.
I think it's an interesting conversation what's going on here. In general, because it's touches a little bit more on sort of structure and business than we talk about sometimes, and how to plug into it and how to organize it. And I'm, I think what the couple of you have been talking about is there's some interesting ideas happening there.
Elaborate, Jed.
Yeah, I'm like torn between.
Hey, what'd you say?
I'm torn, but like I don't want to be
Me cutting out or him?
frozen or something.
Yeah, you're a little frozen.
Go ahead. Yeah, it seems like he's frozen.
Me.
Jed, what are you talking about?
My back.
I mean, I know what you're talking about, but you got to say more than just like interesting.
Well, it touches on things that I guess we've talked about. It's just like how to I don't know. I guess the question of like how do you fund VC as a as a whole thing? How do you maybe some VC money or money is interested in one project? IP is sort of amongst the groups, developing things. It's not like kind of one IP necessarily. So it's like how do you I guess organize, compartmentalize that thing in an efficient manner to scale, in a way, is sort of how I look at it. And and then if there is like, I don't know, say one organization has a problem with solar punks because of the word punk, but then there's something really interesting over here on another project that they're interested in. It's like, can it work together in the organization in a certain way? As you were talking about, David, about how there's maybe a fund for certain projects, and it doesn't meet the criteria for others. That sort of fits into that idea of like maybe that IP is not interesting or work well for where that fund is coming from. There's a lot of ways of looking at this, but I think ultimately they're all questions that need to get answered to be able to scale efficiently amongst a wide group of people. And so that's where I find it interesting, I guess, is how do you, or how do you in a way allow this thing to scale with different perspectives and insights and IP models together. And it's like I think we all come at it from different ways depending on if we're more business oriented or more creative, or what we're looking to gain out of it and give back to the group as a whole. So these are just things that I've been thinking about since day one of getting more involved with everyone. And anyways, I don't know if I can be that much more clear than that right now, but
you're wondering about it, and
yeah, I'm trying to make it work.
Yeah, totally.
What?
They have to pick up on your own story.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, no, I'm trying to make it work. I'm trying to I feel like I'm on progress of making it work.
You are making it work. We got Android's Dream is like this is the real deal. Like the pallets of things.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And yeah, it's like I think the more, personally, the more time I spend, the more growth I see. It's something that's building off of itself. And that's that's the beauty for me here, is that that's happening. So but as it does scale and more people get involved, it's like, how do we keep it efficient, I guess, is a way of saying it. How do we keep it efficient? How do we keep it growing, where it doesn't become more complex, but it has structure where it's easier to plug in rather than harder. Because sometimes the larger things grow and the more people get involved, there's complexities there that can get in the way from the flow. So I think all these questions and things are important right now to like figure out, and sooner than later, or not there's a rush, but but I think it's very important to address these things earlier than later.
Yeah, enough structure so it doesn't crush the creative spirit.
Yeah, it's like there's models of structure we don't want to do, but what are the models of structure that really make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And we talk about it some. I think we could definitely like focus on it more, like we kind of are today.
It almost reminds me of the early days of those commercial directive collectives like Propaganda and like the early days of Anonymous. I mean, those were obviously like corporations, but they were collectives in a way where everybody had their own sort of different creative identities, but you had sort of group projects, and it just evokes that in my brain.
Yeah, like other things that come to my mind. Well, so I mentioned AA, and the other, because it was like I was talking to someone yesterday, new person who joined the Discord, who was at Burning Man, and so I think about that, like maybe early days. Like I think now it's like, at least for me. I mean, I'm a little bit cynical about it, but it feels like, oh, now it's 70,000 people. That's my version of hell, just being surrounded by 70,000 people and stuck there, as opposed to what my fantasy image of the early days, where there was a solid, I don't know, it's totally made up because I have no idea, but a lot of things at the beginning that then become a thing. South by Southwest before 20 something. Like when I used to go to that was like, that felt like I was with just this wonderful creative tribe. And then it got sold and it's become something else. Or the early days of like O'Reilly ETAC, which
I was going to say like Food Camp is
Food
that
Camp,
for me.
yeah, Food Camp, yep. And and in a beautiful way, it's almost like that's great that it just kind of dissipated. Because if it kept going, it would have been, maybe someone was like, what, time to pull the plug. That was good. Like the Beatles breaking up. Like that's it. It'll only get worse. Although Metallica kept going, they only got better.
Could Seinfeld have lived another season?
No. So in about
Rick
an
and
hour,
Morty could. Rick and Morty need another season. They're not done.
I think there's something to be said for the tight 5 seasons and you're out type of thing. I find that that's kind of a sweet spot for shows. I got burned by Lost. Got burned bad by Lost. In a completely other direction. I'm talking to this company in like an hour, and they provide a lot of APIs for a bunch of stuff, risk flags and all types of things. And I'm just like, what if there was an API for like the creative consciousness API? So all the design fiction that's being created, just like if you want to tap into like what people are thinking about in this space of like things that don't exist yet, but they think could be cool if they existed, via API. What's that for a weird thing to talk about? That's the full circle. That's the platform conversation, right? How do we end up with the thing at the end that you
So like
monetize?
there's like a lot of stuff going on with LLMs where they're trying to make them do things they're not good at. like regurgitate facts. Um, uh, but there's one way you can use them where like you take the embedding space that it's made, and then you just use that as a high dimensional space to put your like facts and documents in. And so if you put like everything that was in our chat in that high dimensional space, you'd be able to just query it for like what's in there and like what things are around it. And I think like that's actually what they're going to be used for. It'll just be like fancy custom search. So I think yeah, you could do that API. And I think that's like kind of related to like I think the MIT model is an interesting one to think about because it's like why do people go to MIT, or like why did people go to MIT? I think now people go to MIT because like that's like a fast track to get into places like Google. But like back in the day, I think you went there because like you wanted to work on this like cool new technology, and that was the only place where you could get at it. Like it always felt like in the early 2000s or late 90s, it felt like they were one step in the future. And if you wanted to work on the cool new stuff, you would try to go there because like they had the connect. They were the people who had like the stuff before everybody else. And I think like one framing of like, hey, how can we have like NFL be this cohesive thing that people want to come to, even if like, well, over there's like solar punk, but don't worry about that if you've an allergic reaction to that, because like over here there's a watch, and over there's like we're redesigning city urban transit. And I think it's like, so like why am I going there? And I think like I don't want to say like you need a mission statement because that sounds so corporate, but it feels like some combination of like we're fostering the creative consciousness to try to make a more habitable world. Like that's just to like stitch two things that Julian says together often. That like you come here to learn how to be creative, to apply that to like real problems that we see that people have, and that's it. And like that's like a super broad remit, and like you can do that for everything. And like you don't even need to have like a real product at the end. Like you can just make art, and that's okay. That's a more habitable word. It's got better art in it. And yeah, I think like having the real pitch for why somebody would come and like do a project with us, like might be helpful framing. And if you get that clear, then the people understand what they're investing in. Like they're not investing in like a book. They're not investing in something. They're investing in this as a cause. Like yeah, LLMs, whatever. But if you want real creativity, you still need humans.
Say, David, can you say the part about the pitch? Try that again. Like I heard what you said. I just I want you to run it through your brain algorithm again. See what different words come out. Because I think
Yeah, I think I'd say like, let me see what did I say. I think I said something like we want we foster the creative consciousness, um, so that you can apply it, so that we can make a more habitable world. Or yeah, I'm notorious for this. I say it and then I don't remember what I said.
there was, yeah, which is fine. We'll play the tape back at some point. But there was something that you said, like if you were able to, I'm not, don't rack yourself trying to remember exactly what you said, but you were feeling something that made you say, if you had like a way of describing what we did, and then there was something like I heard it and I want to hear it again. Like I said, I'll play the tape back. But it probably won't be as evocative as you saying it in the midst of what you were just saying. There's something about like that. It took me to a place where it's like, I know like it would be, I know, I mostly, but like us collectively, if we had a better way of describing why we're here, what gets us in here, like what, there's what's the incentive, because there is no, there's a vague financial incentive, but that's not like, ooh, okay, wait, cool, there's free money over there. It's not that. There's something else. And so you were creating the contours of that, like all of which I not only agree with, but it was like evocative. I was kind of like, oh man, yeah, okay, this is something, there's something here. Like if there was a way of imagine, I imagine the shape of what we are as as in a way, not in a bad way, but kind of like institutional. Maybe because you started with MIT. And then I started thinking like, yeah, that's right. Like that was the place you went if you wanted access to an oscilloscope, something as mundane as that, or a 3D printer. Oh my God, they got 3D printers. I got to go there. What is it? $60,000 a year, totally worth it. And now, you can go on Amazon and get one for $150. And so then I started thinking, it's like, well, what's MIT's value proposition now? Is it just, well, then you get to wear the T-shirt with a sense of pride when you go out jogging? Because no, I actually went there. Is that enough? And it made me start thinking about the like Scott Galloway's thing, like NYU's a ripoff. I know I teach there, but it's a ripoff. You're paying me $1,100 per credit hour when you could get this elsewhere. And then of course he starts his own little university. He's charging no small amount of money to listen to him. And when you said like, and you can come here and you can do a highly technical watch project, and then you said like, or you can do art, and that's good. Like that was super resonant, but what is that place? Is that, and when it's up on a beautiful bluff overlooking the crashing waves of Portugal, what is it? Is that the place you go to in order to experience the vibe of a place that would say that has the audacity to say, over there is like that's kind of like we would call our business school, and over there are the art studios, and everyone gets together for lunch, or something. I don't know.
Those make me think of like three different things, because like the MIT, why do you go to MIT now, made me think of a conversation I had with an NYU film student who had just spent $100,000 a year getting their master's in the film school. And I was like, why not use that money to make a movie? You will learn more. And at the end of the day, it just came down, not just to going to NYU, but who you met at NYU. So I think the same thing applies to MIT, where it's like who you meet at MIT, who becomes your tribe, especially with the Media Lab being sort of so diverse in its topics that it addresses. So that was one thought. And yes, Scott Galloway is hilarious. But then I also thought, for some strange reason, about OpenAI's financial structure, how like 90% is nonprofit and 10% of it is for profit. And I guess they've restructured it now since the release of ChatGPT, but of kind of like, how can you make art just for art's sake under the umbrella, but then still have a small arm of it being a profit generator that sort of supports foundationally the rest of it.
It's kind of like, where are you going to get your credentials? Is it going to come from having MIT on your CV, or because of the network you have from making your film? And I think we're still stuck with LinkedIn saying, okay, where do you have your credentials? And it doesn't show up so much. I mean, yeah, you can dive into somebody's network, but if it's stamped right there on LinkedIn that you had the wherewithal and made your connections at MIT, that counts for some people, and maybe for funders especially. But that's where we are.
Well, yeah, it's not MIT anymore. It's Stanford, but yeah, for VCs at least.
Going back to what David was saying about people used to go to MIT because they were doing cool stuff there. Now they go there so they can get access to opportunities at big tech. It's like, to what end, right? And then to the comment about the credential, who you want to get the credential from. It's like, what do you want the credential for? I feel like it kind of leads back into like the type of work that you want to do. The people that you meet are going to help get you access to the type of work that you want to do. The credential also, and then there's the perception that Google and big tech or whatever have enough, I guess, that have enough dough where they can have a little corner carved out where you can do that like moonshot stuff. And people think that they can maybe get access to that. And that's the same answer, the type of work that you want to do. And I think it's probably the same answer for this group here. I mean, maybe I'm working my way up the Maslow's hierarchy of needs here, right? Because I feel like the baseline, proposition of it being inherently good or having like a positive impact, that's like a prerequisite for sure. But also, I feel like the people here represent, and this NFL Near Future Labs represents the opportunity to do this kind of creative work more. And that's like that's the ticket, right? Versus what I do to keep the lights on, right? Like I said, I'm like I feel like I'm lucky in that I'm like 70-30, 60-40 split, more or less, keep the lights on versus the cool, interesting stuff. But I don't, like, maybe I'm a prima donna, but I want to get to 0-100, and then I think that happens through here.
Those places, by the way, like within Google or those large companies, are constantly shifting. So recently I had heard that like McKinsey came in and said, hey, all this cool stuff that you're doing here, you probably shouldn't be doing that because it's not worth the money.
Yeah, I think
Right.
I think that's disappeared, actually. I think that not disappeared completely.
I mean,
but
X is still there, right?
But there's been a reckoning for sure over the past, like look at what happened with Twitter, right? They were doing this blitz of like hiring foresight strategists across the United States and Canada. Glad I didn't apply to that shit. I mean, those folks are gone. I can almost guarantee, right?
Well, what about all the innovation consulting that was being done maybe like 5 years ago, right? Like there's no more innovation budgets. Like Taco Bell doesn't earmark $1 million to like do innovation in the same way that it used to. So
maybe like they might call it something else, but maybe not the same amount. We're in kind of a wartime economy type of thing, or like constricted type of vibes, right? Which is hard, but at the same time, it's like now it's like this grassroots movement set things up so that when things blossom again, it's like they blossom
This
in
is
this
the
way.
Renaissance I'm talking about. That's why we're meeting in Detroit.
Let's go.
To plan the something or other.
Detroit's an awesome
Vanguard
concept city.
Well, I'm in Chicago at the Hamburger University McDonald's corporate campus right now, so I'm doing the subversion from inside as much as I can. So
more sesame seeds, more buttery brioche buns.
What do we want? Buttery brioche.
Yeah, people got to eat.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally do.
I think that, yeah, like one of the reasons like I come here is like for like creativity dojo and like, my weekly shot of inspiration. That like and like I've worked in like plenty creative groups before, but you end up like focusing on like the thing that's determined by the market that you're trying to hit. So like the space you can think in is constrained, and you don't get that here. Like you get to just like take off the shackles, and like people brownie in motion bounce you in like interesting directions that you wouldn't have ended up in, which is like great. But I think for me that like the habitable future part is also like really huge. Like I think there's that zeitgeisty thing that what we're doing now is not sustainable. Like we can't do it forever, and so like there's part of me that always is anxious when I don't know what the next thing is, and so like I'm trying to figure it out. And like I think that like that is maybe like that could become a siren call. Like if you get to be like, hey, we're the place where we figure out what the next thing is, and like not for money, not for like, we're just trying to figure out like, something as broad as that, like more habitable. It's not like, more wealthy or more profitable. That like if you just have like a very broad statement that's like what's the better next thing, and how do we think about that creatively? I think like you can fit so much underneath that umbrella. And there's motivation for people to show up, because like lots of people have this like anxiety.
I'm definitely aligned with that, David. I feel like such a lone wolf kind of outlier in the like traditional Hollywood film.
Vanguard, you're at the vanguard. Embrace that. Seriously.
Yes.
That's what it is. It's like it's not, the lone wolf is not sad. I'm not, you know,
No.
sad if you want. It's just like this is what it feels like to be at the vanguard. You know, and you get whatever 9 or 10 people, and that's, you know, that's it. But here we are, and we recognize we're at the maybe, you know, what did Navy SEAL say? We're at the sharp end.
Something that always resonated me with was that William Gibson quote that nobody invokes the 22nd century. You know, there's so little hope and sort of positive visions, you know, for the future. And so as a storyteller, that's sort of been my clarion call, my siren call of like, okay, how do we imagine better? How do we, you know, create something tangible and visual for people to aspire towards, to have some hope for? And I feel that there's so many different silos of creativity that are happening around this idea, yet there's very little connectivity between all these groups. And it's really frustrating to me. And even when I try to connect some of these groups, I feel like there's these like roadblocks that go up where they're like, oh, well, we can't really support this. That's not in our mandate. And I'm like, dude, this is not about like a mandate and a small mission statement. This is about saving the fucking world. So, you know, like, let's all get together and do this. I feel like, this group is altruistic in that way, and that we're not here being like, okay, what's our hourly rate and what are we going to get out of it? It's like, no, literally it's a meeting of the minds where our minds have sort of altered states, you know, where they're entangled with the future. For that. Oh, Siri, something else I can help with. Siri just talked to me about that. Yeah, just that our minds, shh, be quiet, Siri. That our minds are entangled to the future slightly, and that we're all just sort of sharing these different experiences of that. So that's why I'm here.
And like I think it feels like pregnant for some kind of like zeitgeist or movements to pop out, like of the kind that we haven't seen in a really long time, like cubism or something like that. Like you have people who are you know, technically architects who write buildings, but they're associated with movements of abstract art. And like there's just like this cross-pollination where everyone's like, you know, this is the new thing. And for whatever reason, like we haven't really had one of those in a long time. And the like aesthetics that went around like the Web3 stuff was just god awful. Like it was just like lacking in any kind of like real novelty. Like it was real retro. And I still think people are waiting for like, yeah, that like vision of the near future, that they're like, you know, that's the near future.
It is interesting to think of it as a place where you go to, not because where do you go? You people come to near future laboratory. I'm talking about like you know, outside agents, external forces or whatever, that are like, we need to try a new kind of innovation unlock. And it seems like you guys have something interesting going on. Like, I think they would, and I think it would be a very particular kind of, you know, whatever decision maker or desperate, you know, leader who would do it, but they would feel enough into it. Maybe just because they're like, man, what, something must be going on here. And I'm curious enough to wonder. And but also I'm curious enough not to expect that if I just go to, you know, God bless them, like IDEO or Frog or Huge or whatever, that I'll get the solution to my problem. Like, I just need a different model. And these guys, I don't know, like they seem happy, content, engaged. I ran into this one character, you know, David at a dinner, and he was talking about it. I don't know, like that kind of organic engagement where it's like, whatever you guys are drinking, like I'll have one, or something along those lines. Like, yeah, almost like mystical, you know, without going too far. Like, or it's just liminal. The engagement provides a liminal kind of mode of, I don't know, engagement. I don't know, something. It's sort of like the thing I haven't said in a long time, but it does come to my mind every once again. It's like there we're situated somewhere between. It's gonna sound like I'm crazy. Somewhere between Apple, Teenage Engineering, Patagonia, and Esalen. Like I remember saying something like that at one point. It's like triangulated around those things. People are like, wait a minute, one of these things is not like the other or something. But the vibe
Yep.
from each of those, like enough of those, minus all the the evil stuff, but it's something about like my nostalgic recollection of Apple, having never worked there, but the feeling I got from it. I'm talking Apple II, Mac era, maybe even just Apple II, and Patagonia, because it's like, wow, do you need a better example of like a values led business, like no bullshit values led, like they just gave control of the company to nature. Amazing. And Teenage Engineering for their kind of playful peculiarity and the audacity of just doing what they feel is a cool thing to do, and doing it with a superlative level of care and consideration, aesthetics and design, and creating a "will follow you anywhere" tribe.
For some reason, you made me think about Costco and like the fact that the CEO will never raise the price of a hot dog in Costco, and the way that they end up doing like repackaging of brands to try to break down the way that those things work. I don't know. There's something like it feels like hyper capitalist, but it also feels like it's something pure about it. I don't know why I thought about that, but I wonder what would be the Costco model for design thinking, or sorry, design fiction. Like what would you buy a pallet of? Like a mega thing of design fiction. What would that be? Besides books, I guess. Or if I derailed your cool company analogy.
You did not derail it.
I do have to go too. I think the conference I'm at is breaking up, so it's going to be lunchtime. Thank you, Julian. I just want to say thank you, Julian, for doing the general seminars on Wednesday. I think they went really well. Thank you.
Yeah,
I really enjoyed
you
that,
for
by the way. I
organizing
think
it.
it went great.
Yeah.
So I'll get some of the clips. If you send me the link to the recordings, I think you just sent me the Chesterbot or whatever analysis. But if you send me the links to recordings, I'll start doing time codes for cool snippets. And then if you want help, just let me know if you want for pulling together a podcast for that. And then I think that's the next step. But
Cool. Yeah, I'll do that.
and then yeah, anyways, if people are interested, I do want to play Microscope to create a fake lore and culture around a corporation. So I'll get like 3 to 5 players is probably enough for that. So if people are interested, I'll set some times up for that. But anyways, I'm going to say hi.
Cool.
That's why I come here, is for status reports.
Yeah.
All right, I'll see you.
Take care, Chris. Enjoy the burgers.
Yeah, I guess I'll drop as well. I have a free weekend coming up, like the weekend after next. And yeah, like I should probably just black book that to spend some time cranking on the book. It would be good for us to figure out like what it is that we think is like holding us back from pushing print. You could probably do that in the meantime.
Yeah, those little blockages. I've been talking a lot about blockages this week. Like, what's so hard about making just like I'm supposed to be working at this summer. I was supposed to finish a Near Future Laboratory, like the business side of the website.
Yeah.
Like I had the whole summer to do. I don't know what, maybe like 4 or 5 pages
Yeah.
of big text. Just couldn't get it done. I think I figured out why, maybe, but I still haven't gotten it done. And I think so. The why just it's related to our conversation. Is like, do I want clients?
Yeah.
It was just too damn hot. You can, I think, push it off on climate change.
Yeah. I like that. I'm going to blame climate change for all of my procrastination.
Too hot.
Too hot.
Yeah. Okay. Have a nice weekend, both.
All right.
See you, David. Good seeing you.
Bye.
So Julian, I'm heading off to Berlin in a few days, and
Awesome.
yeah, and I've got appointments to meet with a couple of design studios that are one of them claims to be the speculative future epicenter of all of Europe. And you look at what kinds of events they do. They do the meetups. They host all of the meetups in Berlin for speculative futures. But if you look at the people that they're bringing in, you know, like scientists from Vienna and stuff like that, who are developing games, like this next week is they're developing a transportation board game that is speculative futures, and they're having everyone at the meetup break up into little tables and play. Too bad I'll miss that one. But anyway, they're actually letting me come in and talk to them. And then there's another smaller group of people who have daydreams. This is something they're trying to get up off the ground. And I'm just curious to see what kind of angle they're interested in working on. But then also a bunch of burned out UX designers and UX researchers and stuff like that. So I'll have some things to report when I get back.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, enjoy the trip. Safe travels.
Thank you. Yeah. My first time there, but the saying goes, jeden einmal in Berlin, which is everyone should go to Berlin once. But again, mentioning about the illustrations for my Pecha Kucha, which is in early November, I may or may not need anything new, but I just wanted to open the door in case I saw something that seems to really suit a particular slide.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't need the whole thing. But I in case I do see something, I wanted to make sure I could get that page.
Sure.
And that's it. That's what I got.
Cool. All right. Well, maybe we'll wrap on time this week.
Yeah. I'll talk to you later.
Okay. Bye, Susan.
Bye.
What's
Hey.
going on?
I think we're wrapping.
All right. No, that was great. That was great. Like there's a lot of stuff that it's been swirling around my head, and the subject was very much it's like I've been having this idea, and I've talked to some people that are in the entertainment industry in Montreal, and a friend that's like starting a production company. So I told him about this idea that I had in mind. And now it's like this conversation just made me realize that it's time to get that out and really work on it. But it's like I had the idea of getting that to the traditional, like, because it started as a world building idea, and then to build a story around it. But then lately I've been thinking about, well, maybe I can take advantage of being at the university and create the concept, and then maybe like I know what the people will look like in that world, but maybe like work with the architecture group, for example, to develop like what that world would look like and what the vehicles would look like, and then maybe like make, in the event that the story does get out, before I would even do that, I would get out like more like a like those books, like those concept art books, like that come out after a movie came out, something that's kind of like a Cosmic Motors kind of book.
Yeah. Wait, sorry. Do you mean like the kind of, look, I'm looking at one over there for Blade Runner 2049, and it's showing like the concept art that production design kind of did. Like their early sketches and that kind of thing, like that kind of book.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I figured that would be kind of hopefully, like the idea is like I really do get the story. I have an idea of what the story would be, but I don't have a clear idea nor characters. But I know exactly what the people look like in that world. I know exactly, all that stuff is very clear in my head. Like the sketches have already been made. It's just a question of now, like making it into digital sketches, and then from that, like, and then maybe like in a Cosmic Motors style book, right? Like where like there's some sketches, but there's some 3D renderings.
Cosmic Motors?
Oh man, I left that book at home. Cosmic Motors is it's a book by by Daniel Simon. He's a car designer.
Okay, I see it now.
And he created that book, and out of that, and after that book came out, he became he became the concept artist for movies like Oblivion, Tron, like the latest Tron movie, Oblivion, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. So that book, like he created, like again, his background is car design. So he made this book where it's like it's another world.
Gotcha.
It's not like he designed like those vehicles for this other world. So like the way he shows it in the book is through like some 3D renderings and also like some digital sketches that he did. So it's a combination of both to show what that world is like. So something along those lines I'd like to do. So
yeah, this is interesting for a number of reasons. So, and maybe it's building on what it sounds like you had a little bit of unlock from coming to office hours, but
absolutely.
There's a thing I'm doing in Detroit next week. Part of it is this. It's called Lawrence Technological University. I have some friends who teach there. They did a being outside of Detroit, they're doing an exhibition of, essentially they called it like mobility futures. It's called mobile something 2050, something like that. And it was just like a lot of people using generative AI, mostly Midjourney, to create the brief was simple, like mobility futures. And let me just find it on Instagram. Anyway, so they've been setting up this exhibition, and I'm on the jury. It's a very casual thing. And they're just like these thousands of submissions. Where is it? Mobile Detroit 2050.
Mobile Detroit.
That's the Instagram thing. So they've got a whole bunch of the images on there. So my mind went there, and there's a project. Damn it! It's on. I wrote it down so I would do it. It's on a index card. I keep writing it over and over so it doesn't get lost. Is that I was doing a lot of messing around with Midjourney, creating images of vehicles. So this Cosmic Motors is evocative. It's fascinating. It's relatively old, which is beautiful. And where am I going with this? So when I was making these images, so I saw the image on the cover of the Cosmic Motors. I saw that image, and my mind immediately went to the reaction I had when I saw a lot of other people, which a lot of people were making cars with Midjourney and posting them, and maybe just I don't know, like I saw them and I was like, that's cool. Oh my God, that's cool. And also at the same time, I was like, that's too easy, because I knew how easy it was to create these things. Not super easy. There's a little finesse, but you're definitely not getting out a sketch pad and your set of markers, right? You're jamming things in. And I was like, there should be a little bit more of a lift to this. And so the thing that I started doing, almost like just from instinct and curiosity, was the hard part was writing the descriptions. Like sit down and write. Instagram gives you 2,000 characters, so I started writing these things as if these things were in an Auto Trader magazine, like a newspaper where you're going to buy a new car. Write the description. That's what I gave myself as the task.
Oh, okay.
If I'm trying to sell the car, and just so that was actually hard. That was legitimately hard and fun, because now I started building a world, right? Because then I started talking things. I started throwing in these things. I had a reference. One of the guys we're working on a project together. He gave me the reference to this like little news. It looked like the kind of thing that you would just pick up in one of those boxes, free newspapers. The kind of crappy newspaper, but it was just filled with for the part of the country he grew up in Maine, in southern Maine. And he's like, we used to get this. It's called Uncle Henry's, and it had, I'm selling like a air compressor. I got a set of lightly used snow tires, just like crap, just stuff, but it was
Yeah.
beautiful. And I
Yeah.
started looking and studying the ways in which people are describing things, and just started trying to, like lay that into these descriptions, these cars. So nothing was new. It was all like, secondhand, and I would make up names for companies that were sort of vaguely familiar. It would be like I would cross Ford with Intel,
Yeah.
like, what is that? And as I was doing that, the thing that I really enjoyed was I didn't know what the world was to begin with. So I'm doing this over a period of, I don't know, probably a couple few months.
Mm,
Just every once in a while be like, let me do another one. I post it, and the world started building. I started imagining, it's like, what are these things and what are they good for? And it was definitely not. It was like as if it were maybe our world, but it had evolved. But the evolution wasn't like more tech. It wasn't that direction. It
yeah.
was like the way I can talk about it now. It's kind of like it's a world where there are lots of distributed communities for some reason. There's lots of communication that happens over some kind of radio network. Because I would say, like if you were selling something, or if I was selling something, be like, contact me after the third shift, and then I would be like at 55.7 gigahertz. I'm usually around, kind of thing. So I didn't
Mm,
even know what this stuff was, but in my
yeah.
mind, I could sort of envision it. There was there was at some point I put in like there's an implication that something had happened below some latitude or something. Like I said, I can't remember how I put it. It was like maybe like if you're north of the 42, then
Mm,
um something. I just started, but there's nothing was explained directly.
okay.
And there's something about that indirect process, and also not fetishizing the vehicle.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like I mean, they're gorgeous and they're luscious, but just looking at the cover of Cosmic Motors, it's like it's a weird thing, but it's just in a blank space,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
like a Cornell box, just enough light. I don't know.
Yeah.
There's something about that I really enjoyed, and so thank you for bringing that up, because now I'm like, I got to do that zine. I got to finish.
But it's like I never think about it. I'm not gonna think much more time. But like uh, along the lines of what you're talking about, that's because I just looked up the mobile Detroit page, and so another friend who's like is also like a designer artist, and then one of my cousins a graphic designer, and like and he's been playing with Mid Journey. Some what you said reminded me of this idea about, because my family's originally from Haiti.
Hmm.
So I had this idea, like, what if we made this page for Instagram where it's just like, and we started playing, like creating images on Mid Journey already for that, but it's like trying to find a is it, like this page on Instagram where like it's just showing like an alternative world, and an alternate world where like Haiti is not in the situation that it is,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Right. And but like more like in the future kind of
Yeah.
deal.
Yeah.
So
That
yeah.
that's what that's those things get to the heart of where I think the value is of these kinds of tools.
Yeah.
Like real, and so you're exactly like finding ways to explore the worlds that we imagine, whether or not they exist, but there's a sense of like of hope and desire for occupying those, inhabiting them in some fashion. And if that fashion happens to start with the imagination
Mm,
and the dreams that we have for these worlds, uh,
yeah.
then that's beautiful. Like
Yeah.
I would encourage that strongly, and
Mm,
to agree that there's anything that if there's value in coming to office hours to talk about those things, I think you're gonna
sure.
get like everyone's gonna be like, that's amazing. Like that, and sometimes it's just that affirmation that kind of takes the project forward, and I'm sure people would. I mean, I would love to see that, and
Yeah.
mostly because I want to see what you imagine and dream, and then also operate on probably the not very helpful stereotype of what people imagine.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So like,
Yeah.
how can you in that operating on people in that way, um, is also has value, because you know the closest I've been to Haiti is like the Dominican Republic, and it was like, no, 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 don't go over there.
That's interesting what you just said because my friend, like when we started when we started like creating images on the journey with it, like I was going more on the along the lines of um showing what the schools would look like. And it's interesting because Hades was traditionally known for like the how the school the kids have like the uniforms, right?
Mhm.
And like Mid Journey was coming out with all those kids like in a class with the exact uniform
Yeah.
that kids have. So I was going in that direction, but my friend was going more from the history of from the standpoint of the history of Haiti, right? Like with the like from the military standpoint, like being like the only successful slave rebellion, and they like beating the French, right? It was Napoleon's army essentially that they beat. So he was like going more like making imagery more like from the military standpoint. At
Yeah.
first I was like, why are you going that direction? But then I'm like, okay, I wasn't fighting it,
Yeah,
you know.
and then your collaborator explains, and then you kind of find the way, and that's the beauty of these kind of like collaborations. Like, how do they integrate in different ways? The other thing, as you were talking about, and your use of Midjourney, um, I mean, it's hard to say because I know how seductive the tool is, and also like me personally, I'm curious now to try experimenting with it, maybe a little bit more collage, where
Yeah.
the image that it generates isn't the final thing, but I also pull in other tools or mix images, but not mixing them in the tool, but bring my own hand to it. I'm just
Oh
talking about
yeah, no,
Photoshop,
absolutely.
those kinds of things.
No, absolutely. I mean, I'm an industrial designer, and I'm a conceptual designer. Like my main thing is about sketching, so that definitely don't want me journey to do the job for me. So the way I normally use it is like now instead of having to do the full photo bashing like step, right? Like I'm having Midjourney kind of use the base of what I can use to photo like to build on instead of having to do the whole photo bashing aspect of it. But I think like now the interesting thing is that now you can put your own sketch and then like you will build from that. Like I'm open to like to instead of putting a sketch, like working up an idea all the way to a rendering and then putting in that rendering and then see what it comes out. But at least I worked it out myself before I'm having it generating something.
Yeah.
So no, but I know exactly what you mean about having a hand into that. Like
Yeah.
so that's not yes, it's supposed to be like a collaborator. I don't want it to be like it does the job for me, you know.
Right. Do you when you think about the project, do you think um about like like the container for it? By container, I mean, I guess like in the design fiction uh notion of the artifact.
You
Um
started for the story, like for which one?
yeah, sorry. So like if let's say you were kind of exploring and visualizing what your imagination was talking to you about the schools.
Yeah.
And my mind, just the way I think, I'm not imposing anything, obviously, is where would I see that so that it felt like it had come from the world? So is it my nephew just started at he's doing a post grad year, and the school that he's going to has a lot of marketing material.
Hmm.
It's a it's a it's actually it's like a prep school, and so they have all this like glossy marketing materials and beautiful part of the state of Connecticut, kind of like woods and stuff. And in that you see the pictures of like here are kids doing walking across the quad. Here
Hmm.
kids with a teacher in front of with a blackboard and the whole thing. And so I started imagining it's like I would see that like if you had gone to this world, this Haiti in your imagination,
Hmm.
and you had a minute to just have a look around because the time machine is quirky, and you
Hmm.
just grab this, and when you got back you're like, oh, this is cool, I got a brochure, like
Hmm.
a nice glossy 50-page brochure from this this academy, oh, and it looks like, okay, it looks like an educational institution. So you do the work, and this is the part where, you know, I was talking about the Auto Trader magazine, where it stopped, where I had to go further. I had to do a little bit more work. So now, not only do you have the images, you got to give it a name. You got to describe, you know, you got to pitch it, you know, as if it were a brochure that you're trying to encourage families to enroll their students here. We're, you know, we got the highest level of, and but then you play with it, because you're like, this is where would I have wanted to go when I was going to school? What would I change about about the education that you know I have or have been having? So you could say like, we emphasize, you know, it's not STEM maybe, or you know, maybe it's like it's combined. You know, you see where I'm going? Like I'm just
Yeah,
trying
no,
to.
I'm saying, no, I like you just bring, yeah, like you're just getting like a bunch of ideas swirling in my head now, because it's like the whole thing is like, okay, yeah, I wanted to do the Instagram page, but it's like, how do we put that out? Like what's the through line? Is that the right word? Like, or like
Yeah,
what's
well, what's I call it, like what's how do you contain the project? So the
yes,
first thing you said, which I totally get, and I would say yes, of course, is the Instagram thing. So you got a visual container for all things, and I guess what I'm saying is like what I also like to do is just that next level, which is like do a little bit more work, make it into a thing as if it existed in the world.
yes,
And
yes,
so and I go even further than that, is like, you know, is where I actually I manufacture the, you know, the book. So when I talk about the Auto Trader thing, like I've figured out the tooling to make those kinds of things, and I make them, I do a run of them, you know, 1,000, 2,000, whatever, and then I sell them on the shop. And so that becomes that point of entry. So it's not, and I, you know, I don't say it's a joke. Like I represent the stuff on the shop like this is something from a future. You know, like the TBD catalog, the catalog that we have of uh
actually, you just gave me an idea. You just gave me a great idea. Like right, and I'm gonna run that by, because my like I said, my cousin's a graphic designer. He's a graphic designer for this magazine called my God, I'm not forgetting the name now. No Chaser. It's like a sartorial magazine.
okay.
But I like the idea of like maybe like the first page is like is like the cover, but every time it's like a as if it's you like, I don't know, like it's a magazine, but then like you get there and like it's a different subject every time, and just like showing like the different faces of Haiti, and then like I don't know, it's yeah, I'm gonna have to work that idea, but you know, I like what you said there. I'm gonna have to run that by them as well. This is cool. Man, now I got two good reasons. Now I got two reasons why I'm happy. Like I jumped in today. So yeah, but I'm gonna have to get going.
Yeah.
But it'd be cool to jump on a chat some other time. Like I was I was meeting with like with this other professor from a school from this university in Sweden, and like had me like rethinking my whole approach, because not rethinking, because like my research is definitely from a speculative design standpoint,
Mm-hmm.
but I was starting to take the idea of speculative design as a base point to go to actually make the thing. But now I'm trying to think, I was like, okay, well, there's some other component missing, because speculative on one point, like today, but like the real thing being made at some point. But I need another component in the center as to like how to make this approach really work. Right now it's a
Yeah.
bit too, but yeah.
Cool. Well, let's stay in touch. Definitely,
Yeah, for sure.
if you can keep coming to office hours, these are also great places to talk about these
No,
things.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Just like I hadn't been able to like lately, but yeah,
Sure.
I'm jumping back in. So today was a great day to come back in.
Cool. All right, my friend.
All right,
Take care.
thank you.
Estimating the V-bar at 300 feet in about 5 minutes. Question with the CPIS. The